English for specific purposes is a variation of English tailored to the particular needs of a specific academic, professional, and technical fields. In the case of studies in history, history of art, archaeology, and musicology, ESP focuses on vocabulary, grammatical structures, and linguistic conventions that are relevant and necessary for communication within these disciplines. Here you have the table of contents that is going to be followed in this presentation. English for history focuses on vocabulary related to historical periods, political movements, historical figures, events, and concepts that describe past phenomena. This type of English is used to read, analyze, and discuss historical texts, as well as to write academic papers and research in history. English for history of art centers on technical vocabulary associated to artistic styles, techniques, movements, artists, and the cultural and social context in which artworks were created. It also includes specific terms for visual analysis, art criticism, and the description of works of art. English for archaeology refers to a specialized language involving excavations, artifacts, archaeological theories, prehistoric periods and cultures, as well as technical terms for fieldwork methodologies and material analysis. Finally, English for musicology focuses on the technical language of music theory, music history, notation, genres, compositions, performances, and analytical tools. It also encompasses terminology related to ethnomusicology, musical heritage preservation, and music criticism. Students of history need to read and write articles and essays about historical facts, theories, and primary and secondary sources. In this context, English is a key language. Also, mastery of ESP enables understanding of older historical texts, as well as translations or relevant sources written in English. And participating in academic congresses or international seminars requires the precise use of a specialized academic English to present theory, share research, and debate. From the professional point of view, historians often collaborate with institutions that have international audiences or work on global projects. ESP allows them to write reports and give presentations in English on their research. And finally, in the future, they could work in public policy and international organizations. So English is the lingua franca of many international ones. So our students may contribute to policy making or projects related to historical preservation or conflict management. Also, students of history of art must read academic texts, in this case, analyzing artworks and the historical, cultural, and artistic context in which they developed. Specialized English allows access to critical resources and international research articles on art movements and important artists. Much of our history research involves consulting archives or visiting museums abroad. English is necessary to interact with collections, art catalogs, and international bibliographies. And writing academic papers, monographs, and presentations in English enables students to participate in the international academic community. As far as the professional context is concerned, art historians work with international institutions such as museums or galleries, so proficiency in English allows communications with collectors and international visitors, as well as the creation of exhibit descriptions or catalogs in English. And in the future, they could review exhibitions and write for international journals requiring specialized knowledge of English. Archaeologists study a vast number of scientific studies, reports and articles on excavations, fieldwork, and artifact analysis. English is the language in which many of these are written, so a strong grasp of technical terminology is necessary. Also in the future, they could present their findings at conferences or publish in specialized journals. And also, they could work in excavations that involve international cooperation. So English is essential for coordinating joint projects, communicating research findings, and presenting results at conferences. And in professional context, in conservation or excavation projects, archaeologists must write reports and maintain communication with international colleagues from other countries. And in work related to cultural heritage and archaeological tourism, English is also very important for interacting with visitors and creating educational materials and attending international talks or conferences too. Musicology involves reading and analyzing scores, music theory, and historical studies on the evolution of music. It also studies both global musical traditions and Western theories, so ESP allows students to access research on music from diverse cultures. And in the future, they could work in restoration of scores, recordings, or historical instruments, so they could collaborate with international institutions. And at international universities, they could teach and publish research in English, and they could also work with people from diverse cultures, which require specialized language skills to explain complex concepts. Project-based learning encourages students to work on long-term complex projects related to real-world scenarios in their field. This approach promotes collaboration, research, and problem-solving, making it ideal for ESP contexts. Case study method involves the in-depth analysis of a specific case within the field, enabling students to apply knowledge and reflect on real-life problem solving. Here we have some resources we can use for ESP in our classes. For example, academic journals, educational platforms and databases, videos and multimedia resources, and software and interactive tools. In our classes, students can read and analyze academic texts, such as article analysis and debates on theories and interpretations, academic writing, such as summary writing, essays and research projects, and excavation report writings, oral activities, such as academic presentations, role-playing and simulations, mock interviews, also interactive activities, vocabulary games. They can use flashcards or concept maps or diagrams, and virtual visits to museums and historical sites, and collaborative work. In summary, ESP in history, history of art, archaeology, and musicology facilitates academic and professional communication. It enables students to access international resources, collaborate with colleagues from other countries, and participate in English language conferences and publications. Without adequate command of specialized English, full participation in research, publishing, and professional practice in these disciplines would be difficult. The teaching and learning methodologies for ESP should focus on developing language skills that are practical and useful. It is important that students not only acquire technical vocabulary, but also know how to use it effectively in real world. The resources and activities described above are fundamental for teaching ESP. Using authentic materials and engaging in practical activities that simulate real scenarios in each discipline could improve their English skills while becoming familiar with technical and academic language required in their area of study. This approach also prepares them for future careers and academic projects. Thank you very much for your attention.
Hello everybody, welcome to the segundo Congreso Internacional sobre Lingüística Inglesa en el siglo XXI, Desafíos y Oportunidades. My name is Vicente Campos de la Torre, and I am a professor in the Universidad Complutense de Madrid in the Faculty of Business and Tourism. And today we are going to talk about English for specific purposes, teaching in the degree of tourism, as you can see in the title, ESP, teaching in the degree of tourism. But I'm going to talk about also in some other degrees like business and fashion design. Here there is the table of contents. In the first place we are going to talk or to give a definition of ESP in tourism, business and fashion design degrees. Secondly, we are going to talk about ESP and the professional and academic context. On the third place, we will talk about the methodology as an important element, as well as in the fourth place about some resources and activities essential in those methodologies. And at the end, I will give some conclusion when applying ESP in the tourism, business and fashion design degrees in the Faculty of Business and Tourism at the UCM. So, as I said before, today in the context of this conference, I'd like to present a brief overview on how English for specific purposes, for now on ESP, is taught in the degrees of tourism, business and fashion design. ESP, as you well know, refers to teaching English, that is, refers to specific linguistic needs of learners, in particular academic and professional domains. Unlike general English, ESP focuses on a context-specific vocabulary, communicative functions, and real-world situations students will face. ESP, as defined by Tony Dudley Evans, is an approach to language teaching that focuses on the specific needs of learners with particular discipline or professions. It is characterized by 1. Absolute features, that it meets the learner's specific needs, the use of the methodology and practices on the target discipline, focuses on, relevant language, and vocabulary, such as this vocabulary, grammar, registers, and discourse. And in the second place, apart from absolute features, which are the variable features that may be adjusted to any particular fields that may differ in methodology from general English, of course, because here we need a specific purpose and objective, and typically intended for adults or intermediate advanced learners with some or previous knowledge of English. For example, in tourism, students learn expressions related to customer service and hospitality. Business students focusing on negotiation and correspondences, while fashion design students develop language for describing trends and interacting in international fashion events. But remember, ESP is not only about language acquisition, it is about helping the student become professionally independent and globally aware communicators. Here it's important to say that in the academic context, ESP supports and fosters students in understanding subject-specific tests, writing academic papers, and delivering presentation in English. But in the professional, in the professional context, ESP equips or learners to engage with real workplace situation, handling customer interaction, attending meetings, or presenting a project to international clients. Now it's time to talk about methodology. When we are talking about methodology, ESP teaching requires dynamic, interactive, and professional relevant approaches. So when we are talking about this, we mean project-based learning, where the students perform tasks that simulate real-world professional scenarios, like organizing a tour or making deal in the business sector, or just responding properly to emails. But obviously, we are also talking about a communicative approach that emphasizes using language in context, or another strong approach is the content and language integrated learning, that we so-called the CLIC. In this model, language and subject matter are taught together, allowing a student to develop a strong linguistic and disciplinary knowledge simultaneously, speaking all the time in English, even though out of the class. Before keeping with resources and activities, I would like to mention that in the methodology, it's important if no matter if we're using the project-based learning, no matter if we're using the CLIL methodology, or no matter if we're using the methodology that we put into practice, it's important to consider the collaborative activities or the collaborative methodology, such as peer reviews, group projects, and role-playing that we will see in this part now, or resources and activity. Okay, but I think so nowadays the collaborative activity, the collaborative approach is considering itself like a own methodology, okay, apart from the other one, not only as activity or a strategy that we can apply within this methodology. Okay, well, now talking about the resources and activities, it's essential to use authentic materials, okay, in ESP. These are important: travel brochures, okay, or fashion catalog, business emails, websites, anything students might realistically encounter in the field. But all this situation is useful to put into practice a simulation and role plays. For example, at tourism, students might practice being an hotel receptionist. A business student could negotiate a contract, while fashion one might present a collection to international buyers. And what about the digital tools? Nowadays, they are very important in ESP. For example, video podcasts and radio on video tours and IA are essential nowadays. And to end up with these activity and resources and projects as another valuable strategy. Students must create, okay, their own project in groups, such as travel itinerary or presenting a new fashion trends, for example. Okay, so now it's time for some conclusion. Once that we have defined ESP, and later we have talked about the connection about ESP in the academic and professional sectors or fields. Later we talked about the methodology and some considerations regarding their activities and resources. Now it's time, as I said before, to end up telling that ESP is a fundamental, essential component, an element when we talk about preparing our students for success, for both in the academia and in the workplace, when we are training professionals, okay? It doesn't just mean teach grammar or vocabulary. ESP means teach communication, cultural sensitivity, and critical thinking within real professional contexts. For ESP to be truly effective, it must be supported by contextualized materials, engaging methodology, and ongoing collaboration between language instructors, subject matter expert. It's important to keep in mind that when we are preparing students, we are preparing professionals. The future, for example, I don't know, secondary teachers, the future doctors and engineers. So it's important to start giving the importance that this field, so-called ESP, worth. Okay, so thank you very much for your attention. These are the references you can check. And again, thank you very much for your attention.
Hello, good morning everybody. Thank you very much for being here and for listening to us. I'm Isabel Granda and I've been teaching at Universidad Complutense for 19 years, and today I'm going to be talking about the teaching of English for specific purposes in the degree program of Information and Documentation. So the topics that I'm going to be dealing with today are going to be the introduction to this topic, characteristics of English for specific purposes in the degree of Information and Documentation, the methodology that has been used in these specific classes, the type of activities that we have been performing, and finally a short conclusion. So first of all, as an introduction, I would say that English for specific purposes in the field of information and documentation focuses on language skills, particularly written skills, but also reading and some oral. English is going to help these students to support their academic and professional skills. Particularly in the field of archives, libraries, and digital information management. It also emphasizes field-specific vocabulary, communication strategies, and practical tasks. English for specific purposes is going to help prepare students for work in international and multilingual environments, although these specific students are probably going to stay in Spain and will not travel so much, but English is going to help them, provide them the opportunity of going abroad. It's also going to enhance professional competence and employability by associating language learning with real-world needs. The characteristics of English for specific purposes in this degree would be the following. The students that we're going to be dealing with take English as an optional course in the 4th year of the bachelor's degree. This is a very small class, and we have around 20 students, no more, as it is an optional subject, and well, they take this subject at the very end of the year, in the 2nd semester, and they are combining it with the practicum. So students tend to come to class, but sometimes they have to miss because of their practicum. They are around 21 or 25 years old, and overall they have a B2 level of English, although some students have a lower level and a couple of students have a higher level, a C1 level. But I would say that the B2 level is the one that we most have in the classroom. We focus on reading activities and on writing, but we also do some oral and some and we also pay attention to vocabulary, as they need some technical vocabulary in this degree. In this case, we focused on TBLT, task-based language teaching, and well, this semester we have introduced ChatGPT in the classroom in order to try to motivate the students and also to help them use this tool in a way that is ethical and that can be helpful for them. We also introduced some games such as Kahoot in order to enhance vocabulary learning. So for the written activities, abstract writing is the activity that we most do in the classroom. So we focus on indicative and informative abstracts and the key skills that they need to develop in order to be able to write these abstracts in a good way. So students have to learn to summarize documents in an effective way, highlighting purpose, methodology, and key findings within their abstracts. So we try to do activities that promote clarity, conciseness, and appropriate tone. And we also try to support development of critical reading, analytical writing skills. In the oral presentations that we also work in class within the oral activities, we particularly focus on two different types of oral activities. The first one is presentations that focus on topics directly related to different subjects within their fields of study. So this could be libraries, documentation, management of digital information, archives, and also the other activity that we do is try to talk about the practicum and see how they can connect the internship that they are carrying out with the different subjects that they have studied within the degree program, and see how useful or not these subjects have been. Mostly all of the subjects are mentioned in the skills that they have to use within their practicum, although some of the subjects are not that useful according to the students. So we have worked on two different types of different tools that we have introduced within the classroom in order to try to make them more innovating and also motivating for the students. So focusing on writing enhancement, we have been using ChatGPT so that the students have written their own abstracts, informative and indicative abstracts, and we have been practicing prompt writing and also how to try to correct those abstracts in a way that is going to provide them feedback so that they can improve grammar, vocabulary, cohesion within the text, and general expression. And we have also used Kahoot in order to reinforce the technical vocabulary that has been learned throughout the semester. As a conclusion, I would say that for these students, English is quite important, although it's just now an optional subject in the fourth year, but most of them, they have been doing some interviews in order to reach the practicum, and they have become aware of the importance of English in their degree. And so they have really been working very hard throughout the semester. I would also like to mention that methodologies like task-based learning or project-based work are going to foster engagement and real-world application, which is something that is going to help them in their real lives, in their jobs, future jobs. Also, I want to mention that one of the purposes of this semester was to support learning through innovation, and that's why we introduced artificial intelligence within the classrooms, and the experience has been really nice, motivating, and there has been real improvements in the first abstracts, the first writings that they performed at the beginning of the semester, as compared to the ones that they have done in their final exam. This has reinforced the students' confidence, their language competence, and their employability in multilingual environments. Finally, I would like to say that English is a valuable tool for bridging the gap between language learning and professional practice within the scope of librarianship, information and documentation. Thank you very much for your attention, and we will be available for any questions you may want to ask. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Martín González, and in today's presentation I will be talking about English for specific purposes for the case of the Bachelor in Economics. These are the different table of contents that I will be presenting. So first of all, I will introduce myself as an ESP teacher. Then I will talk about the importance of English for Economics and how my groups are framed. Then the methodology that I employ in my classes. Finally, I will present some activities and some final remarks regarding my groups. So first of all, in the case that I'm presenting today, we are talking about English for Economics, but I have also taught other ESP courses such as English for Commerce. In this case, we will be talking about Business English in both cases. I have also taught English for Tourism, English for Fashion Design, English for Statistics, English for Music, English for Literature, English for Information Science, and also some English for academic purposes in the cases of students who are writing a dissertation, and also PhD students who want to learn how to write a research paper. So as I was saying, in the case of English for Economics, I have been teaching this for the last 4 years. So it is a really specific group with some characteristics that I'm presenting here. So first of all, the subject is not actually called English for specific purposes, but Idioma Moderno. So it's like a modern language. It takes place in the first year of the degree, and it also happens in the first term. So that means that I'm probably one of the first professors that my students get to know at university, unless they are repeat students. The subject takes 6 credits, so it's just a 1 semester subject. It's not an annual subject. And it is the only English course they take in economics. For instance, in other degrees at Complutense, like Commerce, I think they take at least 2 compulsory language requirements, and they can also study 2 more, like optional courses. So as I was saying, my students are between 18 to 20 years old, depending on whether they are first year students or they are repeat students, right? And I have a few cases of the latter. These students have no previous experience in ESP, so it is their first contact with an ESP course. They actually think, because of the name of the course, that it's going to be an English for general purposes course. And also it is the first contact they have with tertiary education. The course takes place twice a week. It is like 2-hour class in both days. It's normally alternative days, but also it could be continuous days like Mondays and Tuesdays. Then it's important to highlight that even though groups are formed by 40 to 50 students or even 60, in the cases of languages, students are split into different sections. So one group is normally around 20 students, so that they are less in the class and they can practice more, which is good, because we have a main problem, which is that students have different levels of foreign language proficiency. This is normally from the level A2 to the level C1. The methodology that I employ in my classes is TBLT. So I use task-based language teaching, following the logical idea of a hiring process. So thinking like we have to do some activities like preparing a curriculum vitae, then also preparing a cover letter, sending an email in order to try to apply for a position, which is normally an employment related to economics. And then they have to work for a company. Well, and before that, they have to do an interview. They have to do an oral job interview. And finally, the capstone project is pitching an idea, or it could be an idea or a product for a company in the company that they work for. I also use gamification. I already published an article about this, about Book Lab activities. I normally use Book Lab in order to reinforce vocabulary, since students have to deal with so much specific vocabulary of business English. Sometimes, even though if they have like a C1 level of English, they are not really prepared to know all of this vocabulary. And instead of preparing flashcards and studying vocabulary by heart, we normally do some games using Book Lab. It's similar to the Kahoot experience, if you are more familiar with this. And then students normally compete in small groups, or it could be also pairs, or sometimes individually. Normally I get to decide, and they practice the vocabulary that we do throughout the units using these Google Lab activities. But for more information, you can actually just check this paper I published in 2024. Also, for course material, I actually use my own book, the one that I designed and use for my course. Is English for economic purposes, a university course. There you have the QR or the URL if you wanna check about this material. And it's normally divided into the different units that I teach my course about. So we start with an introduction to English for specific purposes, and then we cover like different historical ideas of economics, and then macro and microeconomics. And it's not like an EMI course, but it's an ESP course, but it is really content based. So we normally speak about different topics about macro and microeconomics, but with the focus on English, right? The different activities that we do, as I mentioned before, they follow that hiring process logical order, right? We first start with the written tasks. So we do the resume, the cover letter, and the email, right? We normally do this within the first half of the course, and then we devote the other half of the course to oral activities. First we do a job interview that they do in pairs. Instead of me interviewing the students, I normally ask them to prepare like a script in which one student performs as an interviewer and the other student performs as an interviewee, and they have to resemble a real job interview. And finally, they have to do the elevator pitch. The elevator pitch is an activity that they do normally either in pairs or in really small groups, like 3 students. Sometimes students can also do this activity individually. Sometimes I also try to link this activity to SDGs, to the Sustainable Development Goals. So for that matter, I ask students to represent different English-speaking countries all over the world, and I ask them to do research about the different SDGs and how those countries are missing some of the targets. And I ask them to prepare different ideas. They could already exist, or it could be innovative ideas that they create. And students just think of an idea that they have to present through an elevator pitch to the rest of the class, and then the class works as a sort of a shark tank, and they invest on the different ideas that students prepare for the elevator pitch. But once again, the whole purpose is that the idea or product that they try to sell and get funding for is something good in order to fight some of the missing targets of the SDGs. As final remarks, I'd say that because they are first year students, they are not properly aware of their learning needs. So they actually think that the course is an English for general purposes course until I explain through the introduction in the first unit. But because they don't have work experience, sometimes they are not really aware of the different professional needs that they will have in prospective jobs, right? And also, I'd say that significant proficiency differences among students in one classroom, even though that the classes are split into different sections, they are really significant. And then some students are really shy, and they are not used to talking in a foreign language. And then we have some other students that have studied in bilingual schools all their lives. So it's a bit of a challenge for the professor to try to disentangle all this chaos and make students speak. So normally I try to make students work together, but because they don't know each other, sometimes they're shy. So this situation, it's a bit challenging, I'd say. And the last remark I would like to make has to do with a paper I published in 2024 with Chavez Juste. And it is some findings that we did regarding this group, which is that these students of economics, they are more motivated than English for general purposes students because they are focused on future goals. So even though that they are not aware of their needs in the future, they are actually interested in those future goals. They actually see themselves, and here we see the most influential motivation factor, which is the ideal L2 self. Students actually think and believe that this is key in their motivation. They want to see themselves in the future, right? They actually have a desire to integrate in the global business environment in the future, and they actually want to become highly proficient users of the language in a professional context. And well, this is all for me. This is the ESP class that I actually teach, and I thank you for your attention, and it would be a pleasure if you have any questions or comments or suggestions for me to improve my teaching. Thank you.
Hello, I'm going to talk about ESP teaching in the degree of Optics and Optometry. I'll do a very brief introduction, then why ESP is important in this degree, what is the methodology that I follow, and the type of activities and resources that I use, and then I'll finish with a brief conclusion. So to start with, in the bachelor's degree in Optics and Optometry is where I teach. I teach two optional subjects. I have Introduction to Scientific English, which is taught in the first year, and then English Applied to Optics and Optometry, which is taught as an option. Both of them are options, but the second one is open to students in any course, so second, third, and fourth. So both of them are considered kind of continuation. So it's expected that students have done the first one in order to start the second one, but it's not necessary. So the relevance of ESP in this degree is twofold. We have two aspects. In the academic environment, for example, in this field, all research, as in most fields, is done in English. So students and researchers can read journals, papers, and books They can watch videos, they can watch conferences and lectures on YouTube, for example, to get more information. And as producers, they can participate in the scientific community life. So they can write posters, for example, which is something that we do. They can go to conferences too and present the papers or present the posters, the studies they do. And also in the professional environment. So if they don't want to continue with the academic life, it's also important for them. For example, with when they are dealing with very specialized technology, which is only available in English. For example, manuals, tutorials, courses that they want to do to specialize a bit more on technical support. If they have to do any paperwork or whatever, they have to send emails to technical support for any instruments they have. So it may be done in English. They can also communicate with non-Spanish speakers. For example, in an Óptica store with foreign clients or suppliers. I remember some years ago, I had a student who wrote to me saying that she was in this store in which they had a lot of foreigners, clients, foreigners, and then she had lost all the notes that she had taken during the courses. She didn't have any material, so she was asking me to provide her with some material now so that she can keep on improving in the ESP in this case, so that she can go and assist these foreigners. I didn't have her as a student. She was there before I started teaching. So it was kind of a lot of years ago. But it was actually a real case with a real necessity. Also for students, they can stay up to date in technological advancements relevant to the business. And also they can get access to global job markets and improve employability and professional credibility. I'm sorry about the typos. Okay, regarding the methodology that I use, I've written 4 rules. I think that are quite basic in my case. So the student's talking time should be longer than the teacher's talking time. To do so, I follow active methodologies, student-focused methodologies. So it's the students who are going to be doing something actively, and with actively, I mean mentally active. Because if they're, for example, writing notes, they are active, they're writing a lot, but it's not mentally active. They are not thinking about what we are saying, they're just writing it down. So that's not what I mean. I mean mentally active, so they have to do something in which they need to think and then come to a conclusion or whatever. Rule number 2, peer interaction, is more important than a student-teacher interaction. So I try to give more time to peer interaction. So it's not me talking to students or students talking to me, but students talking to students and doing something together. So we have a lot of pair and group activities. Rule number 3, enjoy the class time and me too. I think that's very important. So if I do the same every year, every day, I get tired. And I think the students get tired too. They are not going to be the same students every year, obviously. But I think that day after day after day, if it's always the same type of exercises, same type of everything, they're going to get tired. So I try to introduce a variety of exercises, and also I try to introduce gamification. I have a mixture of skills. So we have especially talking and listening. So I'm more focused on oral skills in class because I think that reading and writing, they can do it at home. So even though in my course we have the 4 skills, we practice the oral ones more in class and then the written ones more at home. And rule number 4, I follow a consistent structure. So this is not like contradictory with the variety of activities. I think that we should have a consistent structure, even though you can have variety inside the consistent structure. So I think that this leads to consistent learning. So my class structure is usually we start with the speaking at the very beginning, and we move from general topics to the one related to what we're going to see today. So we go to the daily goal. Then we have the presentation of the contents, which it's not necessarily like lecturing. So we can have activity, we can have a video in which we have the concepts, for example. So we present the content, and then we practice, and then we reinforce, which is we practice again. So usually we have a couple of activities after the presentation and after the speaking in the first place, which is usually, it's not 5 minutes, it's usually 20, 25 minutes, the speaking part. So we have 2 hours. So I think I didn't say. Then I think the students have a clear idea of what they're expected to learn today after we've presented it at the very beginning. And at the end, after they practice and reinforce, they can get an idea of whether they learned it actually, or they need to do more activities at home maybe, or talk to me or something. So the type of activities that we do, we have in class, we have gamification, we have Kahoot and quizzes and Google Club and some others. We have game-based learning, so actually we play some games. Sometimes this is from time to time, maybe twice in a course, maybe once. But we can play, say, murder mystery. So we can have one day in the course, we can have a murder mystery, or we can have one day in the course twice. A board game, a card game, which is adapted so that it includes the contents of the course. So it's not the game as such. Is always an adaptation so that it includes the contents, specifically the contents of the course. Then we have peer assessment. So sometimes we have short presentations. They create them inside the class. Then they present it the very same day. So they prepare it and they present it. And then the other students have to listen to them, to the peers presenting. All of them are going to present the same day. And they have an assessment chart. They have a sheet in which they have some questions, and they have to say yes, no, or assess from 1 to 5 how well the other students did. If they included the vocabulary, for example, so related to whether they are mastering the contents or they are not. And we also have traditional exercises. We have fill in the gap, we have multiple choice, we have matching, short answer. So we also have traditional exercises. And we have, for example, a role play, which is formally assessed or formally assessed or activity, which is usually at the end of the course. So they have to give a presentation. They have to do a presentation as if they were in scientific English, as if they were in a conference, for example. They have to use scientific English that they've learned. In the English applied to optical optometry, they have to simulate that they are in the clinic, so they are with a patient and they have to do the role play, and this is assessed by me. And then outside the class, what I ask them to do is revision questionnaire. So we have questionnaires usually for every activity. I mean, for every unit or every 2 units, they have this revision questionnaire, which they revise all the contents from the unit or units within. And these questionnaires are also exam preparation, because the exercises are very similar to the exercises they have in exams, so no surprises for the students. So as conclusion, we can say that ESP is essential for both academic and professional success in this field. So this prepares students to understand and produce scientific content in English, either more general or more specific to optical optometry. Also, ESP enhances access to technology, global communication, and job opportunities. And the methodology is active and student-centered and is focused on real communication, especially oral skills. And finally, we have varied and engaging activities inside and outside the class support, which supports learning and motivation. So thank you very much. I think that you may have a clear idea how we use ESP here in this degree. Hope that you like it. So thank you.
Good morning, and thank you everybody for attending this roundtable about ESP teaching at the Second International Conference on English Linguistics in the 21st Century. Thanks to the organization for having invited me to talk about my experience as an ESP teacher at the Bachelor's Degree of English Studies at Complutense University. I would like to start my presentation by introducing you to the different sections of this presentation that I'm going to deliver. So first of all, I'm going to be providing a definition of ESP, and I'm going to explain what it means to teach ESP to English undergraduates, which is a little bit different to teaching ESP to other type of ESP students. Then I will talk about the methodology that I use to teach my sessions, and also different activities and resources that students had to do during the course and how they were assessed. And I will further talk about the activities and resources that my students had to design for their own ESP courses. Finally, I will draw some conclusions about this experience that I hope that you find helpful and enriching. So what do we mean by English for specific purposes? According to Araru Hassan, it is specialized English language teaching that aims to develop specific skills of the learner in response to the needs identified or indicated by various stakeholders. So, more in depth, what does this really mean? Well, basically, that ESP is an approach to the teaching of English, not a teaching method. That means that when we are teaching ESP, we can use different teaching methods according to the objectives that we want to obtain. These objectives are focusing on specific skills, that is, specific tests, genres, or linguistic features, such as specific grammar and vocabulary that our students, our target population, need to be able to carry out their professional duties. So basically, the decisions that we make about the activities that we include in our ESP courses depend on the learner's needs. There are several types of ESP courses. We know that. We know that we can teach ESP to university students, also to vocational training students, and also to employees at a company. Some of the most popular ESP courses would be those that we have here, so business English, for instance, English for tourism, or English for science and technology. But there are several of them and of very different natures. So that's why it is very important to really understand the needs of our students before designing our ESP course and teaching English to those students. So the tasks that they are going to be conducted are different. An engineer would not have the same type of needs that business person. So we really need to understand which is the nature of their jobs to actually see which are the grammatical features that they need to use in their daily lives, or the vocabulary, the specific technical terms that they need to use to understand each other, and also the type of language skills that they need to further develop. There are some groups that need more practice on reading and writing, because most of the tasks that they are going to be conducting are writing reports, for instance, or reading emails. And there are others who are going to be more focusing on developing their speaking skills, because they, for example, have to talk to people who are coming to eat at a restaurant, for instance. So we need to bear all these things in mind to actually design our own courses. Now, what is special about teaching ESP to English undergraduates? Well, precisely the fact that here we are not teaching ESP students, that is, people who work as engineers or tourist agents, or willing to learn English to further develop their professional duties and reach a more international audience. But we are teaching students who already know English, and what the future is going to be like is that most of them are going to become teachers, and they are going to be teaching English for this type of employees or students who are carrying other duties. So what does this imply? The fact that the courses that you have to teach to English undergraduates are based on teaching them how to teach and design ESP courses rather than teaching them English. So bearing that in mind, I designed a course that had as a final goal to ask our students to design their own ESP courses in groups, which was their final course project. In order to achieve that goal, I divided the different sessions into theory sessions and practice sessions. These practice sessions were weekly seminars that were directly linked to the theory that was studied at that time, that week. To be more specific, these were the different things that we were doing in each of the seminars. So first we had an experts roundtable in which I invited some ESP teachers that were teaching at that time who had some experience teaching English to different types of professionals and different types of students in terms of students at different educational stages. So some of them had experience teaching university students, some others had experience teaching vocational training students, and there were other experts who had some experience teaching employees at companies. So these experts talked about their own experiences, the different difficulties that they had to overcome, and where they could find some materials and support for their teaching. And students were listening actively to what they were saying, and then they had the opportunity to ask about any type of concerns that they had before they actually decided which was the type of course that they wanted to design. Once we did this round table, then the next seminar was about them joining their groups and deciding which was the topic, the type of target population that they wanted to design the course for, and had a look at some of the literature on the internet and at the library so that they understand which were the most typical linguistic features that their target population needed to learn and the type of skills that they had to focus on, and so on and so forth. And then the remaining sessions was about designing the course. So first they had to do to conduct the needs analysis, in which they were discussing which were the different necessities, lacks, and objectives of their students. Then, based on that, they had to design their own syllabus, and also they had to design the materials of one of the units. And finally, they had to take some decisions about how the course would be assessed and how the students would be assessed. So one thing was how they were going to assess their students based on the different linguistic features and skills that they included in their syllabus. And another thing was about how are we going to assess this course so that we know what failed and what could be improved for future students. So that was basically it, and the students were assessed according to a portfolio that they had to submit after every seminar. So basically, they had to summarize everything that they had been discussing during the session and provide, for example, the design of the whole syllables or the materials that they designed. And then at the very end of the course, they had to present their work in front of the class so that they show the rest of the students what they did, how they carried out the different stages, and also how they designed their different materials. Apart from that, as we were conducting a teaching innovation project at that time related to ESP, I told them that those students who design, or those groups who design the best materials and resources would be uploaded at the digital repository that we were designing. So here you have the website where you can find the different materials that they designed. And this will be an example of one of the materials that the group on textile industry designed. And apart from that, also, those who delivered the most complete their presentation were invited to participate in the first university conference on teaching and learning English for specific purposes. And like this, they had the opportunity to actually deliver their presentation not just in front of their classmates, but in front of a wider audience that included experts, included ESP teachers, but also ESP students of different fields. And they found it really enriching and helpful, especially because these were four-year students who were thinking about their final projects for the degree, and this gave them an idea of what they could do for the final presentations as well. So to conclude, we can say that in order to guarantee an effective ESP course, it is important to train future ESP practitioners, and that's precisely what this course was about. It was not about teaching English, it was about teaching how to design and implement their knowledge about English in a real situation, in a real hypothetical situation, let's say. I think it was very useful to include some hands-on activities that focused on solving potential real problems, because this helps students to better understand the ESP students' needs. They saw that it's not the same to teach English for engineers than to teach English at high school, for instance, to a general audience, let's say. And finally, I want to point out that giving students the opportunity to share and present their work to the world through the digital repository and also through the conference motivated them and actually helped them to foster their soft skills, since they had to work in groups. They had to be creative, as they had to design their own materials on their own course, and they also had to deal with some constraints such as time managing, which is very important nowadays. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention. I hope that you've enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, you can always contact me through the email address that you have at the very bottom of this slide. So here you have some of the references that I used. Thank you again, and I hope to see you soon at another conference.